And one thing I wanted to mention about building your diff, what you want to do with the diff rings, you want to take, I use one of the plastic halves because I really don't use the plastic halves. Some guys say plastic halves are lighter and they're better, but I think with the diff you sort of want there to be that consistency of the aluminum. You want to get, like some 600 grit, something like that, sandpaper. And all you're trying to do here is you're going in a figure 8. And you want to rough up the diff rings so that they're flat and they are going to make some friction. They actually sell a special tool for 12 scale cars to hold the ring while you do this stuff to them. But still got to keep going. This one is pretty good. This one is a used ring. You can keep using the rings over and over again. This one has a pretty good groove in it though. So maybe some fresh sandpaper will help that out. The same thing you gotta do is on a glass surface or something similar. You just gotta go back and forth until you get something out of it. You also need to sort of keep changing the orientation so you're not holding it the same way either. Let's see. This one's really, it's got a good groove on it. But this can take a few minutes. You just got to keep checking it, and eventually you'll get it the way you want it. And if it's too much of a, with the ring, if you let the diff go for too long, you always have to flip the rings too. That's another way to do it. Do the same thing, kind of buff them out like that. These are almost ready to go. There we go, just about ready. The main thing is to make sure that basically what you're attempting to do is just make that rough. It shouldn't be smooth, it should be rough. You can see that you should be able to see the marks on it. You're not trying to polish it, excuse me. So you can do the same thing. This is, I don't know if you can see the ring that's on this one. This had been run for a while. You can sort of see a little bit of a ring on there. And you can buff that right out and rough it up again, and it'll be good as new. And the other thing to do is once you're done, just make sure you spray a little bit of motor spray on there. Kind of knock all the dust and the crap off of it from sanding it down, and to make sure you get everything off of there as far as diff lube goes. So your rings are nice and fresh and you're ready to go that way. Basically you can use, I usually use Calandra sells like diff balls, in a package of like 1,000,000. And it's just, you just keep using them, throw them out every time you rebuild the diff, because if you rebuild the diff when you should, the balls won't be bad or terrible. They'll last long enough. And they're cheap. That's like a $5 package of diff balls. You don't need to, you could put ceramic and all that kind of stuff in there, and that's great, but the diff balls are fine. And that's mostly it. I do try to run, they have the little gear adapter. I do run that inside the spur gear on here, so I can use normal spur gears. So otherwise you're stuck with the Tamiya spur gear, and it doesn't have as many balls as like a regular spur gear will have. You want to be able to run something that's going to have a bunch of diff balls in it. And this has got, depending how many you run, is 8 or you can, if you ran, I think on this one, if you let's see, the outer ring would be 8 of them, and some of them you can even have, you can find some spurs that have 12, but that's what you want to run. Even with the little ring that comes in with, I don't know if the kit should have a little ring that you can adapt spur gears to it. Or 3 Racing also sells a little ring, or HPI Racing sells spur gears that come with the ring, the purple spur gears. And you just want to run, a normal. If you can find a Kimbrough, you can run it like that. It's got a ton of diff balls in there. That's really Kimbrough's probably actually the best because it has the most diff balls. For the size of the diff, I think the Kimbrough is 12, which is great. But depending on what size you need to get your gear ratio. So that being said, the other thing you want to do is look at the shock. Like I was talking about before, you can run this higher to gain more on power steering. And as it depends what you're running here too, on what you want to run in the shock itself for an oil. If you start to run thicker oils, can kind of change what you need to run in your shock, but most of the time you can run like 35 weight oil, and it's fairly universal. 35 will work in most places. Obviously you can go lower depending, but the other thing too is you got to be careful. Sometimes if you don't run a heavy enough oil, you can kind of get the car will dive on the nose a little bit. That, and the other thing you want to pay attention to is the actual shock length. I'll borrow this shock here. Basically, here's your Tamiya shock, and you want to run 35 weight oil. The thing about it is, you can see here, there's a little bit of thread showing. There we go. A little bit of thread showing on there, right there. That's going to determine how much droop you're going to have, and then also it's going to determine how much droop. The more droop you have, the more the weight's going to get on the nose. Sometimes you need to have that droop if the track is bumpy. You need, so the rear end can kind of dip down into the dips on the track. But also the more that thing can droop, this thing can stretch, and the car can sort of get on the nose, sort of pitch up and get on the nose. So a lot of times you want to run an O-ring inside under the piston. That's again sort of a feel thing, but personally I think most of the time you probably could run with the O-ring or a small spacer, like a 1mm spacer, on or 1.5mm spacer maybe inside of the shock under the piston, in here. But it's not 100%. It's sort of a issue you have to figure out for yourself. But if your car's dumping on the nose, yeah, you definitely want to run that. If you run on a real bumpy track and the car's all over the place, you probably want to take that out of there. And some people also run an O-ring on the outside too, but I don't know for how many times you're really getting in a situation where you're jammed that hard. I mean, I guess that's true. The car could jam itself that hard, but you also got the spring retainer there too to stop things. I don't know. That seems like a pretty brutal hit. Anyway, on this one you'll notice there's a blue spring, This is one of the Tamiya fluorescent springs. There's this for the mini car set. You know, this one, there's a yellow and a red, and they're fluorescent. I like those because they're really, really soft. I don't think you need to run these cars real stiff. And they give you the spring that comes with the kit is a red spring, and that's, to me, actually, there's no place to go, you know, lower than that. So the fluorescent set probably works out a little better in that case. So that being said, you can pop that on there and see what I'm talking about. And that's the other nice thing too with the mini car springs being shorter. You also have a little bit more room for adjustment on here, because basically you want to get this thing just to where it's, to start it off, just to where it's touching. And then you can, same thing, once you load the motor up, speed control and everything else, you know, put the thing on tires. You can kind of get a good idea what you need to do to make the car be at the correct ride height and all that kind of good stuff too. How my tires look on here. Riding probably a little bit high. We might actually need to drop that down a little bit. It's probably a little bit high. Got your wing to throw in the back of there too. But that's basically the rolling chassis portion of everything. Just gives you a good idea how you can kind of build the car up. Not too much else to say, I suppose, right now, without getting on to a lot of other topics, but maybe it'll be a little more once we get the electronics in the car, and can talk about what you do with the tires and stuff like that too. And thanks for watching.